One day, you will realize that the people you sacrificed yourself for won't even remember what you gave up. They'll remember only what you failed to give next. The moment you make everyone happy, you quietly declare that your own happiness is negotiable, and the world never argues with that decision, it exploits it. Today, the version of you that begs for approval, fears rejection, and lives for validation dies, because by the end of this speech, you'll understand why people don't respect those who constantly seek to please them. The greatest prison in the world is not built from steel bars, concrete walls, or locked doors. It exists inside the minds of millions of people who wake up every morning wondering how to avoid disappointing someone else. It is the invisible prison of people-pleasing, a place where your own needs are quietly sacrificed so others can remain comfortable. The tragedy is that most people living inside this prison never realize they are inmates. They mistake obedience for kindness, self-denial for love, and endless availability for virtue. Think about how many times you've said yes when every part of your mind was screaming no. You agreed to favors that exhausted you. You accepted disrespect because you feared conflict. You apologized for things that weren't your fault. You stayed silent when someone crossed your boundaries because speaking up felt dangerous. Every one of those moments seemed insignificant on its own, but together they built a version of you that slowly disappeared beneath the expectations of everyone else. People often believe that if they become generous enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, or helpful enough, they will eventually earn permanent love and respect. But human psychology rarely works that way. The world rewards what it perceives as valuable, not what is endlessly available. Scarcity creates appreciation. Unlimited access creates entitlement. This is why the person who constantly gives is often valued the least. At first, people thank you, then they expect you. Eventually, they feel entitled to you. The transition happens so gradually that you hardly notice it. The first favor earns gratitude, the 10th favor becomes normal, the 100th favor becomes an obligation. Then one day, when you finally refuse, you're suddenly accused of being selfish. Nothing about your character changed. The only thing that changed was that people lost access to unlimited convenience. That is one of the cruelest realities of human nature. The people pleaser believes love is earned through sacrifice. But manipulative individuals understand something different. They understand that the easiest person to control is the one who fears disappointing others. They don't need to threaten you. They don't need to force you. They simply rely on your guilt. Guilt becomes the invisible chain around your neck. They know exactly which emotional buttons to press. I thought you cared. I guess I'll do it myself. You've changed. I never expected this from you. These words are not always spoken with malicious intent, but they have extraordinary power over someone whose identity depends on approval. A people pleaser hears these sentences as proof that they have failed as a person. Instead of asking whether the request was fair, they immediately ask themselves how they can fix the situation. Notice the difference. Emotionally independent people evaluate requests. People pleasers evaluate themselves. That difference changes everything. Many people spend years trying to become indispensable. They believe that if everyone needs them, they will never be abandoned. But becoming indispensable often means becoming exploited. The more responsibilities you accept without resistance, the more responsibilities others will place upon your shoulders. Human beings naturally shift weight toward those who continue carrying it without complaint. Soon, your life no longer belongs to you. Your schedule belongs to other people. Your energy belongs to other people. Your emotional stability belongs to other people. Even your identity begins to depend on making someone else comfortable. The frightening part is that this process feels noble. Society praises selflessness. Families celebrate sacrifice. Friends admire loyalty. But there is a dangerous line between kindness and self-erasure. True kindness is a choice. People-pleasing is a compulsion. A kind person helps because they genuinely want to. A people-pleaser helps because they are terrified of rejection. Outwardly, both behaviors appear identical. Internally, they are completely different. One is powered by confidence, the other is powered by fear. Fear is an extraordinary architect. It builds habits that eventually feel like personality traits. Someone who constantly fears conflict begins believing they are simply too nice. Someone who fears rejection starts calling themselves easygoing. Someone who fears abandonment convinces themselves they don't ask for much. But beneath every one of these labels lies an uncomfortable truth. They are not expressing their personality, they are managing their anxiety. The world often mistakes compliance for goodness because compliance makes life easier for everyone else. Few people question why you're always available. Few people stop to ask whether you're overwhelmed. As long as you continue saying yes, nobody notices the cost you're paying. Until your mind begins collecting unpaid emotional debts, every ignored feeling, every swallowed opinion, every abandoned dream, every forced smile, every silent resentment, these debts accumulate inside you, demanding payment. Eventually, they appear as exhaustion, as anxiety, as quiet anger, as emotional numbness. You begin feeling invisible, even while surrounded by people. You wonder why no one seems to appreciate everything you've done. But appreciation cannot replace identity. Recognition cannot substitute self-respect. The painful irony is that the more desperately you chase approval, the more approval slips away. People instinctively value those who demonstrate that their time, attention, and energy are precious. Someone who gives everything away communicates without speaking that they believe they have little value themselves. The world listens to actions far more carefully than words. When you constantly abandon your own priorities to satisfy others, you teach everyone around you that your priorities are optional. When you tolerate disrespect without consequence, you silently announce that disrespect carries no price. When you repeatedly betray yourself to keep someone else comfortable, you become both the victim and the architect of your own emotional prison. And every day you remain inside that prison, another part of your authentic self quietly disappears until one morning you look in the mirror and struggle to recognize the person staring back at you because the face you see has spent so many years performing for everyone else that it has almost forgotten what it truly wants to become. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: people rarely respect someone who desperately wants to be liked by everyone. It sounds unfair because you've probably spent years believing the opposite. You were taught that if you were kind enough, agreeable enough, patient enough, and always available, people would naturally admire you. Yet experience keeps proving something different. The person who bends over backward for everyone is often overlooked, taken for granted, or treated as if their presence is guaranteed. Why? Because respect and approval are not the same thing. Approval is temporary. Respect is lasting. Approval is emotional. Respect is psychological. Approval depends on pleasing others. Respect depends on how you value yourself. Most people spend their entire lives chasing approval without realizing that the chase itself destroys the very thing they want. The moment people sense that your emotional stability depends on their opinion, they unconsciously gain power over you. Whether they intend to or not, they become the judges of your worth, while you become the performer, constantly trying to impress the audience. Imagine walking into a negotiation where one person desperately needs the deal, while the other can walk away at any moment. Who holds the power? It is always the one who can walk away. Human relationships operate on the same principle. Emotional independence creates strength. Emotional dependence creates vulnerability. The person who constantly asks, "Do they like me?" enters every interaction from a position of weakness. Their words become carefully filtered. Their opinions become diluted. Their personality becomes adjusted to match whatever they believe others want to hear. Slowly, they stop expressing themselves and start managing impressions. This is exhausting. More importantly, people notice it. Human beings are remarkably sensitive to confidence. Long before someone hears your words, they observe your behavior. They notice whether you apologize excessively. They notice whether you constantly seek reassurance. They notice whether you laugh at jokes you don't find funny simply to fit in. These small signals communicate something far louder than any speech ever could. They communicate uncertainty, and uncertainty rarely inspires respect. Respect is not created because everyone agrees with you. Respect is created because people believe you stand firmly on your own principles. They know where you stand. They know your values cannot be bought with compliments or manipulated with criticism. Think about the individuals you've respected most throughout your life. Were they endlessly trying to make everyone happy? Probably not. They were calm. They were composed. They were willing to disappoint people when necessary. They understood that every meaningful decision creates both supporters and critics. The people pleaser fears criticism more than failure. That's why they compromise their own beliefs before anyone even asks them to. They assume disagreement will destroy relationships, so they surrender their authenticity in exchange for temporary peace. But peace purchased through self-betrayal is never real peace. It is silent resentment. Every time you suppress your true opinion to avoid conflict, you send yourself a dangerous message. My voice matters less than someone else's comfort. Repeat that message enough times, and eventually your confidence begins to disappear. Then something even more dangerous happens. You begin asking permission to exist as yourself. You ask permission before expressing an idea. You ask permission before setting boundaries. You ask permission before chasing your own goals. Your life slowly becomes a series of negotiations with people who were never meant to control it. The irony is that those who constantly seek approval often become easier to manipulate. Manipulative personalities instinctively recognize individuals who fear rejection. They understand that guilt, praise, and emotional pressure can influence someone whose identity depends on being accepted. A simple compliment keeps you working harder. A small criticism keeps you doubting yourself. A disappointed look makes you abandon your own plans. They don't have to control you physically. Your need for approval controls you for them. This is why emotionally strong individuals seem so difficult to manipulate. Their decisions are not determined by applause. They appreciate kindness, but they do not depend on it. They welcome respect, but they do not beg for it. Their confidence comes from an internal foundation rather than external validation. There is another psychological truth that many people ignore. Scarcity increases perceived value. When your attention is constantly available, it loses significance. When your time has no boundaries, people assume it has little value. When you instantly respond to every request, every message, every demand, you unintentionally communicate that your own priorities are always secondary. People begin expecting immediate access to you, then expecting turns into entitlement. Eventually, your availability becomes invisible because it is no longer viewed as generosity. It becomes the standard. Now compare that to someone who protects their time. They do not ignore others out of arrogance. They simply recognize that attention is one of the most valuable resources they possess. They choose carefully where to invest it. They are fully present when they give it, but they refuse to distribute it endlessly. Others naturally assign greater value to what is limited. This principle extends beyond relationships. It shapes careers, leadership, influence, authority. Those who constantly seek to please everyone often struggle to lead anyone. Leadership requires difficult conversations. It requires unpopular decisions. It requires the courage to say no even when everyone hopes you'll say yes. Approval avoids conflict. Leadership embraces necessary conflict. That is why respected individuals are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear of rejection become the architect of their identity. They understand that disagreement does not diminish their worth. Someone else's disappointment is not proof of their failure. They can tolerate being misunderstood because they know clarity is more valuable than constant acceptance. The greatest shift happens when you stop asking, "How can I make everyone like me?" and begin asking, "Am I acting in a way that earns my own respect?" That single question changes your posture, it changes your conversations, it changes your standards, it changes the people you attract into your life. Because once you stop treating approval as the measure of your value, you begin discovering something far more powerful than popularity. You begin developing the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs permission to be themselves. And that silent confidence becomes impossible for others to ignore because it is built on self-respect rather than constant validation, and therefore cannot be shaken every time someone chooses not to applaud you. Most people believe they are making their own decisions. They believe they choose where to work, who to date, what to say, and how to live. But if you look beneath the surface, you will discover that many of these decisions are not guided by desire, they are guided by fear. More specifically, they are guided by one fear that silently rules millions of lives, the fear of rejection. This fear is so deeply rooted that most people never recognize it. They don't say, "I'm afraid of rejection." Instead, they say things like, I don't want to upset anyone. I just like keeping the peace. I'm trying to be a good person. While these statements sound noble, they often hide a deeper truth. They are not protecting harmony. They are protecting themselves from the pain of disapproval. The fear of rejection is one of the oldest survival mechanisms in human psychology. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your tribe could mean isolation, vulnerability, and even death. Acceptance was survival. Belonging meant protection. Your brain still carries echoes of that ancient programming, even though the modern world is very different. Today, rejection usually doesn't threaten your survival. It threatens your ego. It threatens the image you've built of yourself. It threatens the comfort of knowing that everyone approves of you. Yet your mind reacts as if rejection is still life or death. This is why your heart races before saying no. This is why you overthink a simple text message. This is why one negative comment can outweigh 50 compliments. Your brain isn't evaluating reality. It is reacting to ancient conditioning. For many people, this conditioning begins in childhood. Perhaps you learned that love was earned through obedience. Maybe your parents praised you only when you achieved something or behaved exactly as expected. Perhaps affection disappeared whenever you disappointed someone. Over time, your young mind reached a powerful conclusion. If I make people happy, I am safe. If I disappoint people, I am unworthy. Children cannot question these beliefs because they depend on adults for survival, so they adapt. They become quiet, helpful, responsible, agreeable. They suppress anger, they hide sadness, they become experts at reading other people's emotions while completely ignoring their own. The problem is that children grow into adults, but the survival strategy often remains exactly the same. The adult who cannot say no is often the child who once feared losing love. The adult who apologizes constantly is often the child who believed mistakes made them less worthy. The adult who avoids conflict is often the child who associated disagreement with emotional danger. Without realizing it, you begin living according to rules that were written decades ago, rules that no longer serve you. Every time you avoid speaking your truth, you reinforce those old beliefs. Every time you accept disrespect because confrontation feels uncomfortable, you strengthen those invisible chains. Fear grows stronger every time it goes unchallenged, and something remarkable happens. The life you truly want begins shrinking. You don't apply for opportunities because someone might reject you. You don't start the business because people might laugh. You don't leave unhealthy relationships because being alone feels terrifying. You don't express your opinions because someone might disagree. Eventually, your life becomes smaller and smaller, not because the world limits you, but because fear does. This is one of the greatest victories fear can achieve. It convinces you that your prison is your personality. You begin saying things like, I'm just shy, I'm not confident, I'm not a leader, I've always been this way. But what if these aren't personality traits? What if they're simply habits built around avoiding rejection? Think about the extraordinary amount of energy required to constantly monitor everyone's reactions. You're analyzing facial expressions, listening for changes in tone, replaying conversations late at night, wondering whether someone is upset with you, imagining problems that don't even exist. Your mind becomes a full-time employee working to prevent rejection before it happens. And while you're busy managing everyone else's emotions, your own dreams quietly wait in the background. There is another truth that changes everything. Rejection is unavoidable. No matter how intelligent you become, no matter how attractive you become, no matter how successful you become, someone will misunderstand you, someone will criticize you, someone will dislike you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Trying to eliminate rejection is like trying to stop the rain. It cannot be done, but emotionally strong people understand something different. They stop asking, how do I avoid rejection? They begin asking, can I survive it? The answer is yes. Every single rejection you have ever experienced eventually became part of your past. You survived every one of them, yet your mind still behaves as though the next one will destroy you. That is fear exaggerating reality. Confidence is not the absence of rejection. Confidence is the certainty that rejection cannot define your worth. The moment you truly understand this, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop begging for invitations. You stop chasing people who are emotionally unavailable. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to convince everyone that you deserve a place in their lives. Instead, you become selective. You recognize that not every door deserves to be opened. Not every relationship deserves to be saved. Not every opinion deserves your emotional energy. Your standards become stronger than your fears. And when that happens, people notice a profound change in your presence. You speak more slowly because you no longer rush to earn approval. You maintain eye contact because you're no longer searching for permission. You become comfortable with silence because you don't feel responsible for filling every awkward moment. Most importantly, you realize that rejection is no longer your enemy. It becomes your filter. Every person who walks away creates space for someone who truly values you. Every opportunity you lose points you toward one better aligned with your purpose. Every criticism teaches you whether it deserves reflection or complete dismissal. The fear that once controlled every decision begins losing its grip, and for the first time you understand that freedom was never about making everyone accept you. It was about reaching the point where someone else's rejection no longer had the power to determine who you are or how boldly you choose to live, because the strongest version of yourself is born the moment you stop asking the world for permission to exist and start accepting that not everyone is meant to walk beside you as you continue forward without looking back. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must make a choice. Will you continue living as the version of yourself that exists to satisfy everyone else? Or will you finally become the person who protects their own peace? This choice is uncomfortable because becoming emotionally strong is not about learning new words. It is about abandoning old habits. The people pleaser has spent years believing that being available, agreeable, and endlessly accommodating makes them a good person. But emotional maturity teaches a very different lesson. Not every request deserves a yes. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every relationship deserves access to your life. The strongest people understand something that most never learn. Boundaries are not walls built to keep good people out. They are gates that keep harmful people from walking in without permission. People often misunderstand boundaries. They imagine them as acts of selfishness or arrogance. But boundaries are simply instructions that teach others how to treat you. If you never define those instructions, people will naturally create their own, and most people will choose the version that benefits them. If you answer every call immediately, they expect immediate access. If you cancel your plans whenever they ask, they expect your schedule to revolve around theirs. If you forgive every act of disrespect without consequence, they assume there is no consequence. This is not because humanity is evil. It is because people naturally adapt to the standards you establish. You are constantly teaching others how much of yourself they can take. The question is whether you're teaching them consciously or unconsciously. One of the most powerful weapons against manipulation is strategic silence. Most people underestimate silence because they fear it. They believe every accusation deserves an explanation. Every misunderstanding deserves a defense. Every criticism deserves a response. But emotionally powerful people understand that words are valuable because they are limited. Silence creates space. Silence creates uncertainty. Silence prevents emotional decisions. When someone attempts to provoke you, they are often hoping for an immediate reaction. They want anger. They want guilt. They want panic. Every emotional response gives them information about your weaknesses. Silence gives them nothing. Silence communicates emotional control. Imagine someone insulting you simply to get a reaction. They expect you to defend yourself desperately. Instead, you remain calm. You look at them without hostility. You refuse to explain yourself. Suddenly, the balance of power changes. The person seeking control loses it because you refuse to participate in their game. Emotionally immature people demand reactions. Emotionally mature people choose responses. That distinction separates strength from weakness. Another transformation begins when you stop making yourself endlessly available. Availability is often confused with loyalty. They are not the same. Loyalty means showing up when it truly matters. Availability means allowing unlimited access regardless of your own needs. The first creates healthy relationships. The second creates dependency and entitlement. When your entire day is open for everyone else's emergencies, your own dreams quietly remain unfinished. You postpone your goals, you delay your growth, you sacrifice your health, all because someone else decided their priorities should become yours. Eventually, you wake up realizing you've spent years building other people's lives while neglecting your own. Self-respect requires selective availability. You begin protecting your mornings, protecting your evenings, protecting your focus, protecting your emotional energy. Some people will call this selfish. Do not be surprised. The people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries are often the first to complain when you finally establish them. When someone says you've changed, they are not always criticizing your character. Sometimes they are mourning the loss of control they once had over you. That realization changes everything. You stop feeling guilty every time someone becomes disappointed. Disappointment is not abuse. Someone else's frustration is not evidence that you've done something wrong. Sometimes it simply means your boundary is working exactly as intended. Another powerful shift happens when you stop over-explaining yourself. People pleasers often believe they need permission for every decision. They say no, then immediately provide 5 minutes of justification. They cancel plans, then apologize repeatedly. They decline a request, then invent elaborate excuses, hoping the other person won't become upset. Why? Because they believe their decision alone isn't enough. Confident individuals understand something different. No is a complete sentence, not because they are rude, because they understand that their choices do not require universal approval. The more you explain yourself to manipulative people, the more material you provide for negotiation. Every explanation becomes another opportunity for them to challenge your decision. Every excuse becomes another weakness they can exploit. Sometimes calm certainty is stronger than perfect reasoning. The journey from people pleaser to emotionally independent person also requires changing one deeply rooted belief. You must stop believing that your value comes from being needed. Being needed is temporary. Being respected is lasting. If someone only values you because of what you provide, they never truly valued you.